If you hear voices that other people don't, or feel like your emotions are taking you on a roller coaster without you, then Lurasidone might be right for you. Hi, I'm Aiden Van Opdorp.
And I'm Seper Farahman. This is our presentation on Lurasidone. We will go over the drug's biological interactions, or reviewing a possible richer synthetic approach of creating Lurasidone, underlying the necessary synthetic steps found in literature, and key mechanisms that are incorporated in the synthesis of the Lurasidone. We hope you enjoy.
Second generation atypical antipsychotic. These differ than your old first generation typical antipsychotics that only were agonists of the first gen D2 dopamine receptor. In the second gen, you get all of that and more in the sense of various full and partial agonisms of the 5-HT receptor molecules. Dopamine is known as the pleasure molecule, and serotonin is known for its key role in regulating mood and other biological pathways, especially those affected in schizophrenics. Although dopamine and serotonin are biologically different, they play an important role in regulating one another and also work intrinsically to regulate many important biological pathways in our body. Hallucinations also might be commonly associated with schizophrenia. Hallucinations are also common to psychedelics. And the way that psychedelics work is that they bind tightly to the 5-HT2A receptor, which induce these hallucinations. In second generation atypical antipsychotics, you get full agonism of the 5-HT2A receptor, preventing any hallucinations. And by mitigating dopamine levels in the body, you then take people who have elevated dopamine levels back to regular levels. As we can see in the image above, it depicts this interrelation of dopamine and serotonin in the chemical signaling areas of the brain. A key conceptualization is the idea that whether it's to do this project on time or renew your license at the DMV, motivation is important, and dopamine is the motivation molecule. So if biologically every aspect of our life is either encouraged or discouraged due to dopamine, you could see how dopamine receptors might play an important role and find themselves on most type of other neurons, especially those that aren't dopaminergic neurons. And in reality, we see most D2 receptors not on dopaminergic neurons, but autoreceptors on many key neurons that are important for regulating biological pathways. This is what serotonin does. So, by preventing dopamine from binding, dopamine levels drop, but also by binding to serotonin receptors like 5-HT2A, Lurasidone can further prevent hallucinations in patients and bring patients back to a normal life.
This is a general retrosynthesis of Lurasidone that we created, which includes 6 synthetic reactions to get to our desired product. The first step to synthesis Lurasidone is a Diels-Alder reaction between a pentadiene and a maleimide, using diethyl ether at 20 degrees Celsius for 2 hours to form this organic structure, and then we followed up with a palladium over carbon catalyzed hydrogenation. The reaction below is a ring formation by removing the sulfonates and substituting diethylamine into that structure, forming a 5-member heterocyclic compound. And we know that forming a 5-member ring is very favorable in organic chemistry. And this reaction is done using sodium bicarbonate and chlorobenzene at reflux for 24 hours.
Here we take the products formed in the previous reactions, we put them together in some pretty basic potassium carbonate and dimethylformamide. It's going to take about 16 hours at 120 degrees Celsius, so you better hope that the voices don't get too loud. We form our reactant for part B. We combine this with methanyl sulfonyl chloride, triethylamine, and DCM as our solvent. This is a patent, so there's no literature on the temperature or time, so maybe use some of the voices and friends that you have to give you some ideas.
In this reaction, we have the product of our previous reaction, reacting with the benzo 1,2-thiazine 4-amine. In this reaction, the sulfonates are kicked off, and the benzothiazine structure gets attached to our product of the previous reaction via the amine group. The reaction conditions include potassium carbonate, isopropyl alcohol, and reflux for 24 hours.
The Diels-Alder reaction for diene synthesis, given the Nobel Prize in 1950s chemistry to get this, Otto Diels and Kurt Alder, is one of the most recognizable reactions in all of organic chemistry. And some organic chemists will say that it's the most important reaction in all of organic chemistry, period. That's why most, if not all, good undergraduate chemistry classes will teach this mechanism. Though I didn't do too well on it, we're going to go a deeper dive into our advanced organics class to show how complicated this reaction is. We might remember that 3 carbon-carbon bonds are broken, these being pi bonds, to form 2 new sigma bonds and 1 pi bond. Here in this reaction, we have the pi bond of the malamide attacking the 4 carbon, creating this new sigma bond, which pushes the pi bond between the carbons 2 and 3, which then breaks the pi bond and attacks the malamide, forming a new sigma bond. But as you can see, the reactants are no longer planar, and a good organic chemist might realize that the reactant that we have might not be the favored one. So let's talk about that. Our product is the exo form. And even though at first this might seem favorable as it minimizes steric hindrance, in reality, if we look at most Diels-Alder reactions, the endo product is favored. So we want to talk about why. Here we can see the secondary orbital effect between the C2 and C3 orbitals of the dienes, HOMO, are positioned in line with the LUMO of the dienophile. This happens only in the endo and not in the exo. And this is a stabilizing reaction. It's not a bonding reaction, but this stabilization helps quick or hasten the reaction of the endo. Now, if that's ringing, kinetic, thermo, you're on the right path. This non-bonding reaction helps favor this endo, which happens faster. So even though this exo might be less sterically hindered, which we would think is favorable, it doesn't happen fast enough. And if you hear thermo, you hear heat. So maybe heating this reaction might help organic chemists get certain products that might not be favored or as abundant in nature.
So for our second mechanism, we have the diethanolamine, and we have the carbonate anion. The carbonate anion deprotonates the diethanolamine and makes that good nucleophile. The sulfonates are very good leaving groups. So the nucleophile on the nitrogen lone pairs attack the carbon on close to the sulfonate, kicking off the sulfonate and getting that product. And then we have another sulfonate, and it's a very good leaving group. And I want to tell you guys to make sure to count up your rings, because you are never too smart to mess up the ring. Okay, we counted up the rings. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the nitrogen lone pairs attack the carbon, kicking off that sulfonate leaving group and getting us the final product. And we have that 5-membered ring. Beautiful.
Here we'll have the nucleophile triethylamine deprotonate the OH hydroxyl group. And since organic chemists care so much about the environment, we're going to save paper and steps by moving those bonds right directly onto the sulfonyl chloride and displacing that chloride. Now, in the spirit of organic chemistry and being a professor, we want to say where that chloride goes is an intellectual problem that you can do at home. In the next step, we have the repeat of this same process. So use the triethylamine, deprotonate, move those electrons onto the sulfonyl chloride, and kick those chloride ion right off. We hope you enjoyed our project on Lurasidone. Our references will actually be in the description below, so you can press the hyperlinks and see where we got our data from. And in the spirit of doing a drug commercial, we felt it was pertinent to do the stereotypical. While taking Latuda, which is a name brand of Lurasidone, seek medical attention right away if you have any of the following symptoms: fever, muscle stiffness, pain, tenderness, weakness, severe tiredness, severe confusion, sweating, fast or irregular heartbeats. Best part, dark urine, light urine, no urine, red urine, signs of kidney problems such as change in the amount of urine. We also thought it was an interesting one that says, do not eat grapefruits while on Latuda. And then right after it says, do not drink grapefruit juice, which is it was a very poignant statement on the American education system. Allergic reactions are rare, but if you do have an allergic reaction, which are the including of fever, swollen lymph nodes, rash, itching, swelling, especially in the face, tongue, throat, severe dizziness, or trouble breathing, seek medical attention right away, as these might be the early signs of an allergic reaction while on Latuda, which can lead to death. Not, health complications, just death. Thank you for watching. It was great.